Genderqueer is a word that I've only actually come to understand probably like in the last year or two. So I'd heard of it before, but I didn't actually have a good understanding of what it meant. And I remember I was with a group of friends and we were sat down somewhere. And so we were talking about various things and the term actually came up in conversation. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to look it up on my phone. And so I looked it up on my phone and I remember I was reading the definition of it. And I remember I was reading down through it and I remember just thinking, oh, like, I think that's me. That sounds like me. So this video is about being genderqueer, what it means, and what that means for me. Really quickly, if you haven't subscribed, then please hit the subscribe button. And if you hit the button and then you hit the bell and you just click all notifications, then that will mean that every time I post a video, you'll be notified and you'll be able to see it. So let's start with what the word genderqueer actually means. So the word genderqueer means that you don't subscribe to gender distinctions or norms, and that you may identify with both genders, neither, or a combination of both or all of them. So to me, that means that you don't fit the conventional definition of what it means to be that particular gender, or you don't feel like you fit into that box. So it's like you don't feel like you fit, the stereotypical concept of being a man or being a woman and like everything that comes with that, because obviously like the concept of being male or being female usually comes with a certain set, generally speaking, of criteria. And it's like you don't feel like all of those things that, generally speaking, women tend to feel or experience, or men tend to feel or experience, or the way they're expected to present and be. It's like you don't feel like that. You don't feel like you really fit that. You don't feel like that sort of list of definitions is really you. So I'll tell you a bit about my own experience of it. So when I was growing up, there were very much two sides to me. And I mean, don't get me wrong now, none of these things mean that you're necessarily genderqueer or mean that, a lot of people who aren't genderqueer aren't going to experience these things. But all I can really do is tell you what my experience has been like. So growing up, I kind of felt like there were two sides to me. So on the one hand, like I was quite girly. I don't know whether you'd say I was girly. I liked to dress up. I did like my dresses. I liked to dress up. I liked my clothes. I was definitely more excited about games and playing than I was about clothes. I wasn't particularly excited when I was gifted clothes most of the time, a lot of the time. But I did like to wear sort of like my party dresses and get done up for it, and that was exciting for me. But then I was also quite tomboyish at the same time. So on the one hand, when I was with the girls, then I would, I'd probably be into dressing up and I would do those more kind of girly things. But when I was with the boys, I liked to throw on my shorts and, my t-shirt and whatever. And I did have a serious tomboyish side to me as well. When I was a teenager, I noticed that, most of the girls around me really cared about being pretty. Like that, this seemed to be a really important thing, was that, everybody wanted to be pretty, and, maybe not everybody used that word, but it felt like that was important. Like that was what girls and women were expected to want to be. And, for most people, that was actually important. But for me, as much as I did want to be attractive, as much as I suppose I wanted someone to think that I was beautiful, I didn't really care about being beautiful in that way. I didn't care about being pretty all that much. I really cared about self-expression, I cared about being myself, about, being different and expressing that. And I don't even know if I really came into androgyny in my teens, certainly not early on in my teens. I mean, I feel like I grew up quite late and it took me a while to sort of get into all of these things. But I did cut my hair short, and I do remember going shorter and shorter. And, at that time, as short as I went, I don't think that was, it wasn't considered particularly feminine. I remember being in going to a particular hairdresser's, and it was at that time when, people didn't do, that many different cuts, that many different hairstyles. It would have been back when I was about maybe maybe 15 or 16. And I wanted it really short. And I remember they didn't even want to do it, because this wasn't the done thing. It wasn't really considered a feminine thing to have your hair as short as I had it. And then later on, when I was at university, I really did start getting, I was always into, I'd got into like alternative clothing, but you were much more likely to see me. Like, I did used to go out and dress up, but I feel like a lot of that was because that's what was expected. And then when I stopped dressing that way, when I stopped feeling, like that was what you kind of needed to do to look pretty going out or whatever, I actually found myself much more comfortable not dressing that way, much more comfortable going out and, just wearing like trousers and maybe a waistcoat or something like that. And that was when I started to realize that androgyny felt really comfortable for me and that it did feel very right for me. And nowadays, like I do sometimes, like I do wear dresses and skirts. I wear a combination of things, but like, I think that's the whole thing for me. It's a combination. It really is a combination, like pulling from different places. Like, I wear dresses and skirts, but I'm probably not going to want to do it in an ultra feminine way. I'm going to put on a skirt, but I'm also probably going to put on tights and boots. And I'm going to pick boots over heels. And obviously, again, none of these things are directly necessarily related to being genderqueer. This is just my experience of, like what androgyny means to me, what being genderqueer means to me. And this is just me basically trying to exemplify how I sort of pull from, maybe some things sort of on the more feminine side, and then some things that really wouldn't be considered to be on the feminine side that would be, for me, probably more androgynous, more in between than masculine. Now, there are two really important questions that I'd like to answer here, because I feel like these are things that you hear, and these are questions that you hear, and I think one of them is a statement, and I'd really like to address it because I think that it's really important. So the first one, and I'd really like to know, please let me know in the comments, because I really, really want to know this. I want to know whether you've ever heard anyone say something like this, right? So the first one is, have you ever heard people say, genderqueer doesn't mean anything, it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't exist, it's not a thing, we're all genderqueer, like no one adheres to this particular stereotype of what it means to be female or male, it just doesn't mean anything. Now, okay, I have so much to say on this, right? So I know that there are people out there who feel that way, who think that, it's not a thing. What does it even mean? Like, these stereotypes don't exist. But it's not just about absolute stereotypes. Obviously, obviously being a woman doesn't mean that you have to do all these things, or being male doesn't mean that you have to do all these things. It's not really about that. I know that my experience, growing up, certainly when I got into my teenage years and a bit later, sort of late teens, early 20s, I could see the differences between the things that were generally important to like women and people who were female. And I could see that, yeah, some of those things matter to me, but I could see that I didn't really fit that there were so many things there that were generally important to women that just weren't that important to me. And again, like being pretty, like that's one of them. Like, I feel like that's something that's considered, generally really important. And it's not just that it's considered important. I think generally it's something that often people who are, that often girls and women feel that desire to be pretty, but it just really wasn't that important to me. There were just so many things where I just felt like I didn't really fit that. And so, yeah, sure, it's possible to not adhere to everything, to not adhere completely to a stereotype. Does that mean that you're genderqueer? No. But does that mean that genderqueer doesn't exist because no one adheres to the whole of this stereotype? No, of course it doesn't. Like, for me, being genderqueer, I can tell that, the way that I feel, and, that there are things about me that are, like it's more. No one adheres to this perfect stereotype, obviously, but the things that are different about me in comparison to other people in comparison to most people, a lot of people who identify as being female, it's different. The second question that I really want to address is genderqueer the same as being non-binary? And, I think there are going to be a lot of people wondering that. And, I've looked at that myself. And especially because I felt, I've read about genderqueer and I was like, this is me, this is a really good way to express how I feel about myself. But then I've also heard it being talked about in conjunction to being non-binary. And I actually don't identify as non-binary. So, I was looking into it. And obviously I can't speak for everybody, but I can speak for me. And what I would say, from what I've seen is that, it's not the same. They're two different terms. And I think that they're two different terms for a reason. I know so many people talk about labels and they don't like labels. And, sometimes labels aren't helpful, but sometimes they are. And I see labels as words. And I think in this particular instance, I think it's just about having more words to define you and to express you more accurately. And yeah, so for me, I do identify as genderqueer, but I don't identify as non-binary. I remember quite a while ago, I can't remember when it was, I might even have been talking to my mother about this actually, I think it might have been her who I said this to, but I remember saying, I was thinking about how I felt about myself, and I remember saying, I feel like a woman, but I feel like a different kind of woman. And that really is how I feel about myself. I do feel like a woman. I mean, to a certain extent, I identify as being female for sure. I guess I identify as a queer woman, and I do identify also as genderqueer. But I don't feel the need for other pronouns, and I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable with using female pronouns and identifying as female, even though I do feel that I'm genderqueer, and I know that I don't necessarily fit the general definition of everything. But that's me, and that's just me, and everybody is different. Everybody's different. And so, I know that from what I've seen, there are a lot of people who identify as genderqueer who don't identify as non-binary. There are a lot of people who identify as both, who are genderqueer and non-binary. So honestly, it just depends on the person. So I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, then please hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, then please hit the subscribe button. That'd be really, really great. And I'm going to leave my Instagram handle down below so you can follow me on Instagram if you want to. And, I love comments, so please leave me a comment. It would be really interesting to see how you feel about this and what your experiences have been with this. So yeah, let's talk. And I will see you in my next video.